Caroline Matilda was an English princess who had a short but an intense and dramatic life. She never imagined that becoming queen would be the cause of the many sorrows and difficult experiences she had to endure. Trying to live life on her own terms proved to be a step too far for the inexperienced and unfortunate young queen. She was born on the 22nd of July, 1751, to Princess Augusta of Saxe-Gotha, who had become a widow 4 months earlier when her husband Frederick, Prince of Wales, died suddenly at the age of 44, leaving behind 9 children. Matilda, a friendly child, spent her early years in London and later mostly at her mother's favourite house at Kew. Well educated, Matilda studied history and geography and was fluent in French, German and English. Generous by nature, the adorable and graceful young princess liked helping people and adored her many brothers and sisters. Her austere mother, the Princess Dowager of Wales, was determined to raise her children according to her strict views, keeping them away from the outside world. When Matilda was 13, her mother and her brother George III of Great Britain and Ireland were already making plans for her marriage. Meantime in Denmark, King Frederick V was keen to find a wife for his son Christian. He looked no further than England, given that he had been married to Louisa, an English princess, who died when Prince Christian was only 3 years old. In 1752, 1 year after he had lost his wife, King Frederick V married Juliana Maria of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel, and the couple had another son, Frederick, who was 4 years younger than his half-brother, Christian, Crown Prince of Denmark. After some discussions, Princess Caroline Matilda was chosen as a wife for Prince Christian, and in January 1765, King George III announced the marriage of his sister to the Crown Prince of Denmark. On finding out about the planned engagement, Matilda became rather thoughtful and somewhat worried about her future in a foreign country and getting married to a man whom she had never met before, but the political union between England and Denmark was paramount. No one ever thought of asking Matilda how she felt about getting married. 1 year later, Frederick V died and his son became King Christian VII of Denmark at the age of 17. King Christian was eager to find out more about his future wife, and when he was sent a picture of Matilda, he declared himself extremely pleased with how she looked like. Both Christian and Matilda were rather similar in age, but their characters could not be more different. Christian VII surrounded himself by a group of young courtiers who had no other purpose in life than seeking pleasures. Rumors about his scandalous behavior were spreading, and although the Danes were worried about their king's conduct, he could not care less. It was hoped, though, that marriage would keep him away from his dissipated lifestyle. Matilda could not hide her unhappiness when she heard about the marriage being brought forward, and on the 1st of October 1766 she was married by proxy to Christian VII. The following day, the 15-year-old princess said goodbye to her mother, who wished her tearful daughter much happiness in her married life, and left England. On her way to Denmark, Matilda couldn't stop crying, and in a few weeks' time she arrived in Roskilde, where she met her husband for the first time. After the English ladies-in-waiting took leave of their sweet princess, Matilda was welcomed by her jubilant subjects, lining the streets to cheer their new queen. To the dismay of the nobles attending, King Christian greeted Matilda warmly by embracing her, and in defiance of the court etiquette, he actually accompanied her in the same coach, travelling to Frederiksberg Palace, where she would be staying until the wedding. There she met the Queen Dowager Juliana Maria and Princess Louise, the king's sister, and other members of the Danish royal family. The lavish wedding ceremony took place in Copenhagen on the 8th of November 1766. What Matilda found at the Danish royal court was not exactly what she was expecting. For the king and his clique of boisterous young courtiers, life was an endless series of banquets, balls, and amusing adventures. The nobles were, after advancing their interests, giving way to intrigue and gossip, and scheming to put her own son Frederick on the throne of Denmark. The Queen Dowager Juliana Maria was only interested in achieving political power by pulling the strings of the government, thus depriving the king of taking part in the political decision-making process. Loose manners and morals were the norm of the day at Christiansborg Palace, where frivolity reigned supreme. The members of the Puritan party disapproved of the king's wasteful spending, and the clergy was equally displeased with the sinful lifestyle displayed at court. When in a short time King Christian began treating Matilda with indifference and being disrespectful to her, she felt that she had failed to capture her husband's heart. Fearing that the young Queen of Denmark would become popular with her subjects, the Queen Dowager, who was hostile to Matilda, started spreading rumors that Queen Matilda was to blame for the king's lavish lifestyle. Nevertheless, Matilda was able to capture the people's hearts with her beauty, her reserved demeanor, and naivety. The coronation and anointing of the king and queen took place on the 1st of May 1767. Juliana Maria's secret plans to install her own son on the throne were derailed when Queen Matilda gave birth to a son, Prince Frederick, on the 28th of January 1768. When Christian VII decided to go on a tour to see other courts of Europe, Matilda begged the king to take her with him, but he refused, and she remained in Denmark, lonely, inconsolable, and vulnerable to the conspiracies of the courtiers and Queen Juliana. Christian VII and his royal entourage reached England on the 9th of August 1768, where he was received by his royal relatives. Although George III knew about the behavior of his brother-in-law and how he was treating Matilda, he was just trying to be courteous, but in fact George III disliked the Danish king altogether. King Christian spoke to his mother-in-law praising his wife, but it was difficult for the Princess Dowager of Wales to hide her dissatisfaction with the conduct of her son-in-law, deeply regretting the marriage of her daughter. Unsurprisingly, Christian VII declared that his sole purpose in London was to look out for amusements. Well, George III didn't have time for him, but the Danish king was cheerfully received by the London society, who loved being in his company. Matilda was distressed to hear about her husband's frivolous behavior, which was encouraged by Count Hogg, the master of the king's wardrobe, who was considered the most immoral nobleman in Denmark. On the 3rd of October 1768, King Christian VII said goodbye to George III and his relatives and left London, going to Paris, where he immersed himself in the dissipated life at the French court of Louis XV. Upon the king's return to Denmark, his stepmother was falsely declaring that while he was away, the young queen was receiving attention from various courtiers. In fact, Matilda's behavior had been impeccable. Lonely and retired from the court, she was only interested in looking after her little son and getting involved in charitable activities. Well-intentioned and deeply devoted to her husband, Matilda made efforts to reconcile with him, and she actually succeeded. When it seemed that the royal couple's relationship was improving, Count Hogg made sure it wouldn't last. He influenced the king to only show coldness to Matilda, and as a result, the gullible king returned to his scandalous way of living and carried on being unfaithful to his wife. There was only so much Matilda could endure. Feeling dejected and fed up with her life, one day in October 1769, she began to feel rather ill. When nothing seemed to make her feel better, the king's physician, Johann Frederick Struensee, was asked to help. Struensee's ability as a doctor was remarkable. Whilst his visits to see the Queen were becoming more frequent, her condition was beginning to improve. The doctor strongly recommended that she should do what she pleased. Since Matilda enjoyed walking outside in fresh air, well, why would she not do just that? But royal etiquette would never allow the Queen to be seen going for walks on the streets of Copenhagen. It did not matter, said the doctor. He went even further than that, suggesting that more than anything else, the Queen should seek amusements and avoid being alone. Struensee was a 32-year-old German from Holstein who had met the king while he was travelling to England. Impressed by his professionalism, the king appointed Struensee as his physician. The son of a clergyman, Struensee went to university where he studied science and philosophy. He read extensively and became a free thinker and a skeptic, deriding religion and conservative morals. Struensee assessed the political situation at court and realized that there were two groups fighting for power, one led by Hogg and Bunstoff, and the other led by Queen Juliana, her son, and their associates. Queen Matilda was somewhere in the middle. He soon understood that if he wanted to rise through the ranks of authority, he should not seek the favor of either of those two parties. The way to achieve his ambitious plan was by becoming close to the Queen. Since the Queen hated both factions, his mission was to make her understand that she could have the upper hand and attain more power than her opponents. He disclosed to her that the king's mental abilities were failing, and she should be ready to rule on his behalf. The king was a mere spectator, led by his ministers and courtiers. On a personal level, the king was actually regretting his past behavior towards Matilda and was trying to repair that. Artful and duplicitous, Struensee tried to promote harmony between the king and his wife. When the king became more inclined to listen to his wife, she was able to use her influence over him and concentrate the authority in her hands. The plan worked, and the only thing left for Struensee to do was to make the Queen trust him completely. Well-mannered, Struensee knew how to please a woman like the Queen. He was as skillful as a doctor as he was a charmer. Soon the Queen poured her heart out to Struensee, who was keen to listen. Seeing that someone was finally paying attention to her, Matilda was attracted to Struensee like a moth to a flame, and soon they became inseparable, appearing together in public and at court. Struensee's relationship with the Queen cleared his path to political power. In the spring of 1770, the state of affairs in Denmark was communicated to George III and the Princess Dowager of Wales. Something had to be done about Matilda's imprudent behavior and her relationship with a German adventurer. So the Princess Dowager of Wales left England in a hurry to go and speak to her daughter. In vain the mother tried to make her daughter understand how improper her behavior was. Matilda declared she wanted to rule how she pleased, without anyone else interfering. Queen Matilda and her mother parted on bad terms, without knowing that they had just seen each other for the last time. By December, Struensee was appointed in his role as Master of Requests, and being determined to break the power of nobility, he abolished the Council of State. In his ambitious plan to improve the running of the state, he imposed a series of radical reforms, some of them proving quite popular with the people of Denmark. Soon it was announced that the Queen was expecting her second child, and in July 1771 she gave birth to her daughter, Princess Louise, but rumors were spreading that Struensee was the child's father. When the king signed the order to appoint Struensee as first minister, it caused shock and consternation. The nation was ruled by a foreigner and a man of low birth who obtained absolute power, dictating every order, replacing in effect the king's authority. George III wrote a letter to his sister to ask her to dismiss Struensee and save her honor. The representative of Great Britain in Denmark delivered the king's letter, but it was too late. The conspiracy against Struensee and the Queen had already been planned by the Queen Dowager and her associates. A fake document was produced alleging that Struensee and the Queen were trying to assume full control of the kingdom by forcing the king to abdicate. Subsequently, the king signed the order for their arrest. On the 16th of January 1772, Queen Matilda and Struensee attended a masked ball, completely unaware of what was about to follow. After the ball, they retired separately to their own apartments, and the following morning they were arrested. When Queen Matilda demanded to see the king, she was told he would not be available. Anxious and demoralized, she then asked to see Struensee. To her shock, she was informed he had been arrested. The Queen protested and demanded to be allowed to take her children with her. She was told the Crown Prince would stay, and she would only be permitted to take the little princess. The Queen was then taken to the uninviting and sombre fortress of Kronborg, where she became a royal prisoner. At the end of January, the terrible news about the situation of the Queen of Denmark reached the court of England. King George III was astonished, and the Princess Dowager felt humiliated. Being ill for some time, she died shortly after that. In the meantime, the imprisoned Queen was anxiously awaiting her fate. When she heard about Struensee's harsh imprisonment conditions, she was overwhelmed with grief. To make matters worse, in the middle of February, Queen Matilda also heard about her mother's death. In quick succession, Matilda and Struensee were interrogated. Admitting to his relationship with the Queen, Struensee signed his statement accordingly, and later Matilda was made to sign a statement to confirm that what Struensee had said was true. Matilda did so, thinking it would save his life. A commission was set up to try the case of the king against the Queen. Matilda was found guilty of breaking her marriage vow, and as a result, the marriage between King Christian VII and Queen Matilda was declared null. Although Matilda had ceased to be Queen of Denmark, her daughter was declared legitimate. The divorce was pronounced on the 9th of April 1772, and the following day Struensee was tried and found guilty of adultery with the Queen, signing orders without the king's knowledge and undermining the royal authority, all amounting to high treason. 2 weeks later, when he was executed, Matilda was heartbroken. When the Danish government decided to send Matilda to permanent imprisonment in a faraway fortress, George III declared that if the Danish government did not agree to hand Matilda over to his keeping, his ambassador in Denmark would be recalled to London and a state of war would be declared between England and Denmark. The Danish government gave in to his demands, but unfortunately for Matilda, she was not allowed to see her son again or to take her daughter with her. Matilda pleaded with her brother to be allowed to go to England, but her request was refused and she was sent to live in Celle, a small town not far from Hanover, belonging to her brother's dominions. At the end of May, Matilda left Denmark after almost 6 years. She was crying when she first went to Denmark, and sadly, she was also crying when she left. She was warmly welcomed by the people of Celle, and with her brother's financial support, she settled in the castle of Celle. Soon, Matilda adopted a 4-year-old girl named Sophie to look after her and provide for her education, anything to take away the sorrow of losing her own children. When she was sent a picture of her son, she was overjoyed, but she missed her own children terribly. Meanwhile in Denmark, people were not happy with the Queen Dowager Juliana Maria and her government, who were trying to reverse the reforms imposed by Struensee, which had actually been well received by the Danes. Missing Matilda, King Christian VII was not happy either, and he even admitted he had been forced to accept the divorce. Popular support was growing for the deposed queen, and the blame was thrown at Juliana Maria, who had conspired against the young and inexperienced queen. A plot to bring back Matilda to Denmark was being discussed, but it did not materialize. In May 1775, Matilda developed a sore throat and fever after an outbreak called the Purples had spread through Celle, claiming many lives. It was hoped her condition would improve, but sadly it didn't, and she died. She was not even 24 years old. Matilda's unhappy marriage made her search for her own happiness by falling in love with a man for whom she was just a means to an end. Tragically, it brought her much loss and suffering.